Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge, and welcome to Eldridge and Company. My guest today is Helen Rosenthal. She's a member of the City Council. She represents the Upper West Side, and it's called the 6th Council District. I'm lucky enough to catch her on her way to a meeting, so I've asked, she stopped. She's not driving while she's talking. Anyway, hello, Helen.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thanks so much for having me on. I always like checking in with you because, you know, this is really your district.
No,
So.
come on. It was. I was there, then Gail Brewer came, and
right.
then Helen. And it's a great district. It's actually known
Exactly.
as the most liberal, one of the most liberal districts in the country. I told Helen that way back in 1968, some professor called me and said, Robert Kennedy told me to call you. I was telling him if we don't do something, we're going to lose the west side of Los Angeles. He said, call Ronnie Eldridge. She'll tell you about the west side of Manhattan. So there we go.
That's great. That's great.
Anyway, Helen, you've been in the news lately because of the homeless situation and the Lucerne Hotel, where the city had put homeless people in order to try to protect them from the virus from a shelter where everybody is one next to the other. And it caused quite a furor in the district. What's interesting is that you had a counter demonstration, and the community really engaged in a debate. That doesn't always happen.
Unfortunately, there have been two groups of Upper West Siders who have disparate points of view, and I'm working so hard to sort of come to a middle ground.
Well, a debate doesn't mean that you have to come to a middle ground. I mean, at least there's a reaction. You would like to have a middle. But the mayor.
Well, I think there's actually a very good place for all of this to land. Okay. So at the beginning, the immediate reaction was, what the heck's going on here? And it was a legitimate, valid concern. There were a lot of things on the street that were more than discomforting. And so, look, I and the other electeds all kicked into high gear and both saw and heard about drug dealing, aggressive behavior by both street homeless and the shelter homeless. And so, we asked the shelter provider to enforce their good neighbor policy, which means that if people can't behave, in other words, if they continue to show aggressive behavior, they lose their privilege of staying at the hotel on the Upper West Side. So by enforcing that, over 43 people have left the Lucerne, and the shelter population has indeed come down. The police have also responded by arresting and getting off the streets drug dealers. They've arrested over 20 people by this point. Those people have not come back to the streets. For those who were shelter tenants, they've had to leave and go to another shelter. We're not kicking them out to the street, but again, they lose the privilege of staying at the Lucerne. So my feeling is, we heard the concerns. They were very legitimate concerns, and that is why we responded. But now we're in a very different situation, except for isolated instances where there are street homeless, as there always have been street homeless. The shelter population has quieted down. That is no longer an issue. In addition, there's a segment in the community that have now risen up and said, hey, why are you attacking homeless people? Don't do that. And we're here to stand up for the homeless people.
But why don't we have a better policy? We've had homeless people forever. We've had crises every couple of years. Why haven't we found the policy?
That's a great question. And, you know, of course, it's directed at the mayor. I'm certainly not an expert on homelessness, but you're right. The fact that we're in the situation where one group of people could have a lawyer call City Hall and then City Hall would decide to just unilaterally unilaterally move people, nearly 300 people,
That's
out of
terrible.
a shelter downtown is ridiculous. Um, and it reflects the fact that City Hall does not have a homeless policy. I
But
mean,
this,
the one thing I would grant them is they don't, if you believe they have a homeless policy pre-COVID, it is the case that in our COVID lifetime, um, there is no homeless policy except to keep people that had been living in congregate shelter, to keep those clients and the staff there, to keep them safe.
I'd like to pose a different solution. I mean, I agree. We have very little, we have no leadership in City Hall, as far as I'm concerned. I don't, you know, it's just disinterest or patching. But we can never adequately provide for homeless people and other social service needs without a different way of funding our city's needs. And that means more federal aid to states and states to us. This is not a city problem. This is a national problem.
Yeah, national problem that's just going to take off like crazy. I mean, even the CDC under this pandemic has ordered a national moratorium on evictions.
Yeah.
Even the federal CDC. I mean, there's an impending housing homelessness crisis of a proportion we've not seen since the Great Depression.
Right, and there's certainly no understanding of cities. I mean, now
Exactly.
We've got a crazy attack every day on cities, but there is no understanding of urban needs. I keep going back, you know, to my history, but God, during the Vietnam War, the motto was something like butter instead of bullets. Here we have a Congress and a president who boasts about the industrial complex, the military industrial complex, or all the money we spend, how large our forces are, and we don't spend the money where it should be. So hopefully,
and there's no question.
This, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question, you know, everyone is hanging on to the hope that Biden becomes president and that Biden is wise enough to make federal money available to states, cities, localities, because there's no doubt Mnuchin, the top financial advisor to President Trump, he has invested money to keep this Wall Street alive. He's investing federal dollars to prop up the markets. That does nothing to help the people who live in the country. And hopefully our next president will be able to see past that and given the weight and the economic, you know, downward spiral that's been caused by the pandemic. Again, it's no one's fault. It just is a reality. That they will provide New York City with the billions and billions, possibly tens of billions, that we need in order to keep people in their home, keep them safe, try to get them back on their feet with jobs. There's so much work to do.
But even beyond the pandemic, you know, we see the attacks on public housing. How are we ever going to provide adequate anyway?
You're right.
We need to elect different members of Congress and a different president, but let's move on. I really want to know what your impressions are about city government. I mean, I knew you before you ran and before you were elected, which incidentally, you were elected, weren't you, with the largest vote in the city?
Mm-hmm.
That's because you come from a very active district, right?
Yeah, very vote-rich district.
Yeah. How has the actual experience lived up to your expectations?
Great question. I mean, you know, look, I'm just thrilled, humbled, honored to have this job, to have been, I know this is not a catchy slogan, but you and I are talking for a moment. Part of why I ran for office was because I think I understand how the city works and I have a good moral compass. And I felt that if I were in the room, we would have better public policy. And I feel I achieved that goal. And because I was in the room, we were able to integrate our schools on the Upper West Side, something that would not have happened had I not been there. And now, with this, trying to keep some dignity for the homeless clients. And in general, it's been my effort to make government work better for New Yorkers. And I think I passed a lot of legislation, funded a lot of things, pushed a lot of policies that have made that happen. And I'm really proud of that. Well, what has surprised me, though, that I didn't realize, and you're going to laugh, Ronnie, because it's so naive, but I did not realize how transactional things were in City Hall, how much of the case it is that I'll do for you in order for you to do for me. And I, as probably like you, I find it very distasteful. In other words, I think of myself as an independent person on the city council. And yet, always throughout my entire 6.5, nearly 7 years now, I have had to take some votes that I haven't particularly liked. But by doing that, it made it so my bills that I think made a really good positive difference were passed into law. What to make of that, right?
Well, that means, unfortunately, about the political structure and the politics and the kind of people that then become public servants.
That's right, because the people I've seen who are able to rise up are the most transactional. I mean, that's how you move along.
By transactional, you mean reacting to something. What is that word?
Sure. I know. I didn't know what the word meant until I experienced it myself. It means, well, this is a gross exaggeration, but let's say
somebody, well, make it simple. Somebody you need tomatoes and you can't get them, but there's somebody who has more decision-making power who has the tomatoes. Is that a good
right? Word? Yeah. And then what that person wants me to buy zucchini along with the tomatoes, but I don't want the zucchini. But I'm willing to say I'll buy both in order to get the tomatoes. And more likely than not, it's money. It's the zucchini industry that is behind that whole decision. So no one needs zucchini. Again, this is just an example. I love zucchini. But in this story, we don't need the zucchini, but we're forced to say yes to it in order to get the tomatoes, which we desperately need.
It's like the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate not wanting to antagonize the president because he will then retaliate by running against them, taking money away, or that kind of thing. Is that
1,000%. So that the U.S. senators who are Republican, who perhaps do not agree with Trump, know that if they don't vote a certain way, federal money will be taken away from their states.
Why does somebody who has both the zucchini and the tomatoes and gets a lot of money from the zucchini things in a city that has publicly financed elections, why is it that important? Why is that important to them?
We have seen a lot of change since public financing came into place, and it may be the case that it'll take a couple of iterations. I firmly believe this council is stronger in terms of small d democracy compared to the council that you served in. There's a lot more independence given, because funding is not, the funding that is given to each district is not based on the council member, it's based on need. So for example, when you were a council member, you know, if the people at the top didn't like what you were doing, they would take money away from your district.
Right. So
but that doesn't happen now.
Yeah. But then why do members succumb to it?
Well, perhaps they have political ambition and they know they need the zucchini lobby to get to the next step.
I think that that's a characteristic of politics, is that we've lost the idealism or the goal that's really much larger than just being elected or doing a better job.
I think that's right. I mean, if you take a step back and say, what does this city need right now? I would argue that the city for our next mayor needs to be someone who has a guiding philosophy of social justice, of economic justice, but is also a capable manager. You know, somebody who can not micromanage, can hire terrific people around her, and then you know, let them take care of things.
Right.
Right. And I don't think we have that now. I don't think, in terms of the people who have announced, I'm not sure that we're there yet. We have people who have been able to be very politically savvy. But do we want someone who's politically savvy, or do we want somebody who is literally competent and cares about New York City, is never going to run for president, or not interested in eyeing the next electoral job, but really cares about New York City and wants to pay attention to the issues here for the 8 years that she will be in office?
But also that they can see to the future, that they have a goal, not running. So you mentioned she.
Well, you know,
that politics would be different with more.
I do. There's no question in my mind. It's not even a second thought. I think that this city has been run by men, and that is one of the reasons why we're where we are. I think Andrea Stewart-Cousins, letting her be in leadership, she is the only woman
in the state
who has real power. Liz Kruger has some power as chair of the state committee on finance, but there are only 13 women in the city council. The mayor, white male, the comptroller, white male, and the public advocate, a black male. Let's throw some women into that mix. Let's throw some more color into that mix. Let's throw some more people with the lived experiences who need to fight for the heart and soul of New York City. I don't think that is another round of Giuliani's.
Yeah, I have always believed that women have a different perspective, because they're the ones who have mothered, basically been the mothers and the people who are running a household, who go to the shopping and see what the prices are in a supermarket. I mean, you could ask some men, they wouldn't have the faintest idea what that's all about, right?
Yeah, there was a famous example when George Bush was asked how much a carton of milk costs. But exactly that. Women have always been the glue in their families and in their communities.
So are women organizing? Are they trying to elect more women?
There are a number of groups that have that in mind, but it is so interconnected and complicated. When you actually, it's so it's so transactional. In other words, women elected officials who feel an obligation to endorse men because that man has endorsed them and got them elected to office, despite the fact that that man may or may not represent the best interests of the electeds, the female electeds constituency. So that's problematic, right? And, you know, we're fighting, I mean, you know, we're fighting hundreds of years of systemic misogyny and racism. And we have seen borne out how people with power don't want to give it up. And so they do phenomenal things to not give it up. So it's really hard for us to make this big cultural shift. We have to, we're going in the right direction. Um, we're all wondering, right? If Biden wins, will Trump give up the presidency? I mean, that's the ultimate example of someone with power who may not be willing to give it up. But is sort of an extraordinary situation.
Yeah, that's kind of extreme. So do you have a relationship with a party organization?
Personally, I don't. I've tried to keep electoral politics out of my being a council member. There hasn't been, I'm very familiar with lots of different political groups, political clubs, civic organizations. I've gone around the city. A lot of them are just terrific, and they're helping to get people out to vote. A great example locally is the Three Parts Democratic Club, whose mission is to simply get people out to vote. And that's just terrific.
Right. But does it mean that you're excluded from certain things? That was the basis of the question.
Maybe.
And that you have to fight it. I mean,
maybe.
That
Sure.
You get challenged in elections, right?
Get challenged in elections, not included when there are letters going out from elected officials, not included in strategy meetings, all because I don't want to accede to this idea that cannot be an independent voice, that I would have to work in lockstep with a group of people whose point of view I may not agree with.
So let's go to the budget. You voted against the budget, and you're a very active member of the finance committee that really worked on the council side of the budget. Are you satisfied with the budget process the way the chair has now done it? That the mayor proposed?
That's a much bigger question. It's a fantastic question. You know, I think the way it's written into the charter, there should be transparency so that when the council passes the budget, they should know enough detailed information to be wise enough. But unfortunately, you know, there's this inherent tension between the council and the administration, and ultimately the council usually doesn't know enough on which to make a really good decision.
But also the council sees the other side of it, of how that budget has affected their district. And so wouldn't it be helpful if they had more of a participation in the mayor's putting the budget together earlier?
100%. I mean, that is part of the tension. And also it's what sort of what should be happening is this mayor has a vision for the entire city. So says, for example, I want to make sure there are senior centers throughout the city. Great. But then a council member should be able to raise their hand and say, I don't have any senior centers, or the senior centers in my district aren't working, or the senior centers in my district aren't getting paid enough to do a really good job at being a senior center. So not only do you need to increase what you pay to the people in my senior center, but it's endemic across the city. And that's how council members try to engage in citywide issues as well. And that has been one of my issues, that the city just consistently underfunds our social service programs, crippling them, and then being mad or surprised that they can't do the good work that we ask them to do.
So we've just got a minute left, but
oh my goodness,
assume that you'll miss this a lot.
A lot. Always.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are people out there who want to run, who, like me, will catch up to speed and can really do a great job. It's been wonderful this second term to have the fresh voices where there was turnover. And I'm sure whoever comes in for not just my seat, but I think it's about 40 citywide, will bring
quite a turnover.
That's right.
It's a crazy thing too about term limits. It should
Yeah.
at least be staggered. But are you hopeful about the future?
Sure, you have to be, absolutely. And I think that people who have never been heard before are now making, sure their voices are heard, and that's the goal.
I agree. And I'm sorry that we're not going to see you at the next term, but I hope we do some other way. So thank you, Helen Rosenthal.
Thank you, Ronnie Eldridge. As always, you've maintained the soul of the Upper West Side. Always appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.